I mean, the first point is that RDR is not a South African invention. So it emanated in the UK, and that has always been my point of contention. We can't just crib the UK. And it seems the FSB have understood that, and probably brought about by the results of what's happened after you implemented in the UK, the decimation of the independent advisor, and a similar outcome in Australia. So I think anybody who's keeping an eye on these things would have to say, okay, we have to proceed with caution under that point. So I think that's why we got some agreement on that second point. The other point, which is I don't think fully understood, but glad to see that the FSB have understood it, is that whenever you talk to anybody, and it was evident in all the conversation and all the questions from the floor, everybody sees themselves as an advisor and going to solve all the world's problems by making people more professional advisors. And my argument is that the independent person who calls him advisor is actually not an advisor. He is a broker or an intermediary, and that's why he's an intermediary that gives advice. And as an intermediary, he gets paid for placing business with the insurer. And he may give advice to be able to persuade the client, this is the type of product that you actually need. But there are vastly different consequences if you are an advisor than if you're an intermediary. There's enormous professional liability exposures. If you give advice, and you're going to be held accountable for that particular advice. And a lot of phase and a lot of legislation is forcing that onto the intermediary. And as you know from the articles which I've written for the journal, this has resulted in an increase in claims against professional liability claims against brokers. Yes. So what I wanted to try and do is to restore that balance, to say start off as an intermediary being paid for placing business, and you may also give advice in order to be able to achieve that, but do not see yourself purely as an advisor. You're not, as in the case of a doctor, and if you go and see him, when you see the doctor, he's not acting as an intermediary. It's not behemoth between somewhere else. It's just giving advice.
So what do you want to see brokers doing in terms of moving RDR forward?
Well, I want to see them moving to retain commissions as a central method of being paid, not the advice. And, the English model was to abolish commissions and say you're only going to get paid for advice given, which is the professional advice. Is to resist that at all cost. Continue to be paid for what you're doing is paying the business, and try and deal with this rising legal liability claim by making it clear that you're not a professional advisor, you are an intermediary. So in the RDR model, that's what I'd like to see come out, which is completely opposite to what's happened in the UK. And it's completely opposite to the thinking, because the thinking is we can solve all the world's problems by making professional advisors. We're not going to solve those problems for reasons I won't go into. Those problems exist from some other reason. So that's the second point.
Just to wrap up though, I mean, a forum like today's, is it useful? Do you find it valuable to engage with intermediaries, advisors, brokers, product suppliers and the FSB?
Yeah, I think today was particularly useful because I think that there's a growing consensus and a growing understanding. And without forums like this where you can air these sort of things, that understanding won't be there, particularly in the person in his practice, because the person in his practice doesn't have exposure to the debate and to the discussion. Yeah. So in a case like this, I think they should go away reassured that the process is now under good control and it may come out in the right way. Not just going to follow the UK, so it may be quite pleasant.
Going forward, what would your advice be to them?
My advice is, that fantastic expression, carpe diem, seize the day. And do not see the RDR as purely as a threat, but as a fantastic opportunity. Because in its phase as it now, it's really just a survey. It's not regulation. The regulations come from the survey. So they should use this opportunity to define what they believe their role to be. And in doing so, take into consideration the point I have made. Their main purpose is an intermediary, not an advisor. But he has the opportunity to define it.